Welcome everyone. We're delighted to do another session of the Property Marketing Lounge, this one to celebrate International Women's Day, which we all know took place this week. It's a really important day in our calendar because very much part of our mission is to drive equality, diversity and inclusion in the sector. So we couldn't go past this week without doing something around kind of International Women's Day and how we, as part of that conversation, how we can be part of that change. We once again have as always got a great panel lined up for you today who will be introducing themselves shortly. Please do use the Q&A button for any questions, so as ever, please fire away the questions and we can put them to our panel. And please, if you want to join any of our other events or look at some of the other work we're doing and initiatives, kind of including our youth forum and other insight and research we're doing, please check out our nice shiny new website. And yeah, enjoy the session. I think it'll be a good session.
One of the next events that's coming up that we wanted to talk to you about is our youth forum. We run these sessions bi-monthly with a group of amazing young people to find out what they think about the issues that matter. And we've done one so far this year on well-being, on sustainability, and we've just done one on the customer experience and how their property affects that. So watch out for that coming in the next few weeks. Right, in the meantime, we would like our guests to introduce themselves. Chithra, would you like to go first?
Yes, hi. I'm here today representing Women in Property. I'm the National Vice Chair, supporting our National Chair, Nicola Jones. And Women in Property are an organisation that has been around for decades, supports women in the property industry to move forward in their careers, provides mentoring, support sort of networking events, CPDs and all that sort of stuff. So a really supportive and inclusive initiative. And then also I'm an associate director for Buttress Architects, which has a Manchester and Leeds studio, a leading design studio, I should say, up in the north. And I'm not only just an architect, but I'm responsible for our social value, EDI, and our health and wellbeing initiatives.
Fantastic, thank you. And we'll pass on to Rob.
Hi everyone, Rob Moyle. I'm the CEO of Collegiate AC. Collegiate manages student accommodation across the UK, and we've got about 10,000 beds across the UK with multiple sites up and down the country. I'm new-ish to the role, right? I've been CEO in this role for about 18 months, so I came into this business right in the middle of the pandemic, which has been quite interesting, taking over a team in the midst of Zoom calls. And look, I'm here as much, well, I want to contribute, obviously, but I'm here to learn as well. I think it's really important. Days like this, it just brings awareness. And in fact, I can't remember anything about International Women's Day last year or the year before, but that might be because I was caught up in the pandemic and a transition into a new role. But for me, anytime we can bring up awareness is really important for anything really, right? But particularly around the great contributions that women provide in our sector.
I think it's important to kind of point out that the reason that Rob was invited onto this panel is that we've noticed over the course of the week really that there's most of these panels are kind of chaired and taken part in by amazing females, which is great to see, but we really feel that men should be involved in the conversation to shift the dial even further. So thank you very much for agreeing to be part of it, Rob.
Thank you. I'm very excited to be here.
Sarah, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. I'm Sarah Hayford. I'm the founder and CEO of the Land Collective, and we are a youth-focused organisation that aims to bring more young people into the property and wider built environment sector through things like engaging programs, events, also kind of free resources, and also just making sure that young people are aware of what's actually going on around them in the sector. Deanie is actually one of our amazing board members, so she sits on our board. And yeah, our whole thing was focusing on young people. So we kind of start off around 17, way up to kind of like 24, 25, when people are transitioning into kind of chartership and becoming a young professional across the sector. So that's who we are.
Thank you. And last but not least, Sally.
Hello. So I'm Sally Day. I'm from Saltoria Marketing, which is a small marketing company with my colleague Victoria. We used to work at a company called Liberty Living. So I have about 15 years experience in marketing generally, and about 5 years experience in student accommodation roles in marketing specifically. So I worked at Liberty Living and also University of Arts London. I'm very, very passionate about equality generally in the workplace, and especially women in accommodation roles and property roles. And I think this is a very, very important discussion. And I'm really excited to open the chat and have a good conversation about this.
Fantastic. Well, thank you all. I mean, what you've just said, Sally, is a really good place to start, really. So for the rest of you, why did you agree to be part of this panel, and what does International Women's Day mean to you?
Yeah, should I start whilst I just finish my last bit? I would say just what I just kind of said around equality in the workplace. So of course that's a very wide subject, and we could talk about diversity for a very long time, but I think very specifically women in the property and construction area is often stereotypically not focused on, and I think there's a lot we can do in terms of leadership roles, and in my experience there is good diversity in kind of lower level roles, but I think in terms of like leadership roles where there's kind of stereotypically more power and more influence, I think there's a lot more work that can be done. And I think it's just really important to keep this conversation open and make people feel comfortable to have these conversations, and also asking people for feedback as much as possible at all levels. Thank you so much for hosting this and getting this conversation going.
I think also it gives us an opportunity to celebrate, all the contributions that women are providing, particularly in my business. And for me, it raised my awareness. So, it prompted me to run around and go, well, what are we doing, right? What could we do more to make it a better workplace? So for me, it made me look at our statistics of just, well, how many women do we actually have in the business? How many women do we have in management positions, in senior management positions? And I was pleasantly surprised, actually, right? From our standpoint, we've got over more women actually in the business than men, if you look at the overall business. So that surprised me. I wasn't expecting that. And then if you look at, all our buildings and all our sites, we actually have 70% of the managers are women, which blew me away. I wasn't even aware of that, right? So this is why it's been terrific to be part and being asked, because I probably wouldn't have asked that statistic otherwise. And then when it comes to senior managers, you're right, we're a little bit more top heavy in the male area, but not by much, right? We have 46% of our managers, senior managers, are female, so it's nearly 50-50. But for me, some of our best achievers are women in the business, and for me, that's exciting, right? And I want to create an environment where we're thriving, and that means bringing a whole lot of diversity in, because our student customer base is diverse.
And you bring so much more, don't you? Everybody brings their own personal contribution to a business, don't they? I mean, mine's from an intersectional perspective, really. I've always been interested in trying to level the playing field, I suppose. I had mine was prompted really by having an amazing mentor in my early career, male mentor, I should say. And he saw something in me that I didn't even see. Had nothing to do with me being Indian or a woman or anything like that. And so he really inspired me to try and do the same. And I suppose with my background as well, that's even less diverse. That area of diversity is not fully realised within the property and construction industry. So things like women in property were like a no-brainer for me. They offered me a safe support network for me to get some contacts and start to build my my experience, and I think that you need that when you're not the biggest share of that industry. You need your allies, and you need your others to come in and help you do it. And I think throughout my career, I've advocated for inclusivity and equity, I should say. So that's what's prompted me to get involved in a lot of International Women's Day webinars, or even written articles and things like that, because the more we talk about it, the more we get it out there, the less strange it becomes, really.
Yeah, I also very much agree with that. I think for me, International Women's Day is kind of twofold for me, because one of the reasons I started off the Land Collective was because when I was trying to break into the industry, I was trying to make some contacts and start networking, and I thought LinkedIn was the way to kind of go about that. So I started going through LinkedIn, and all I saw were kind of white male faces until I found like one Black woman who worked in property, and she really helped me out. She not only told me how amazing the sector was and her day-to-day roles, but she also kind of put me in contact with other people. She got on the phone with me to look through my applications and all that kind of stuff. And she didn't have to do that at all. But it was really nice that she did. So part of the Land Collective is also just kind of passing the ladder back down for others and doing the same thing. And I think that's kind of also what International Women's Day is all about, and just celebrating women and the achievements that they've made across the sector. But also for me, it's about accountability. Which can sound like kind of scary, but I mean, that's kind of like the whole point. You know, we're trying to make a more progressive society, industry, workplace, and things like that. So I was really, the other day, I was really kind of engrossed in the whole gender pay gap bot thing on Twitter. And they basically, if you didn't see it, it was just like an account. Then they basically searched through Twitter to find companies that were posting about their International Women's Day and celebrating women in the workplace, but what they would actually do was they would retweet and say, well, actually, women in your company are being underpaid by this much, or you only have 3 women in your company and you have like a international base of like however many employees and things like that. So it would actually kind of call them out in a way that was, I think, quite brave and quite good, because what they can now do is go back to the drawing board and be like, you know, maybe we shouldn't be putting out these bold statements if we're not doing the work internally. And quite a few companies actually deleted their posts altogether because it just looked that bad. So, you know, I think accountability is also a really important part of that conversation. And I think, you know, we should all be doing our part to make sure that our companies or organizations are doing their bit to ensure that they are diverse.
I think you're right, because a lot of companies may do it inauthentically as well. So they will do it as a tick box exercise, and not because they're employing the best person for the job. They'll be trying to redress their quotas. That's the priority, and that's just such a wrong way to do it. You need to redress your quotas, but also have the best talent working in your organisation, and it's a really difficult one for people to do, and you have to sometimes having to hit targets as well puts that pressure on. But I think it just has to be done authentically. We're at Buttress, we're about 50-50 now at Buttress Architects, and everything we try and do with that is do it from an authentic approach. We employ people because they're good at their jobs.
Definitely.
And do you think there is, to both those points, do you think there is enough challenge in the sector? You know, we talk about celebrate and we talk about, you know, but should we be challenging more in a constructive way that actually people can do something about it?
I think there is quite a lot of challenge in the sector as it is. And I think if not, there are more organizations popping up to keep companies and businesses more accountable, like having to publish like pay gap figures and things like that. But I also think kind of going back to what Chithra said about it being difficult, I think with the challenge also comes some solutions for that. So it's also saying, okay, calling out companies and things like that, saying, you know, your figures aren't good enough in 2022, but it also might be, well, if you are finding this difficult, you can partner up with this organization, or you can sponsored this organisation who can help you improve those figures in an authentic manner, because they do exist out there. So sometimes it's not just about that challenging piece, but it's also about providing solutions, because people really do struggle, and recruitment is such a difficult space to be in, and you don't want to like hire the wrong people and then all that kind of stuff. So I definitely think that solution element and that encouraging element also ties in with the challenge too.
Yeah, I would say, on from what you've just said, a lot of the time it's about people not pausing and taking time to focus on these things. And I think especially with our industry, it's very busy, very hectic. There's a lot of day-to-day priorities, but sometimes it's about taking a step back and going, have we actually asked our employees what they think? Have we asked our customers what they think? And actually listening to those answers in a meaningful way and doing something as a result of what they're saying. And I know it's hard because everyone's very busy and there's a lot of stuff going on in the world right now. But I think it's very important to carve out some time in those management meetings and time with everyone that works for the companies to listen. I know that sounds quite basic, but I think we don't do enough listening in our world at the moment.
It's not just about recruitment, it's about succession planning as well. So you plan for the future. So you've got to do it on every aspect of your business, basically. And not expect it to all happen in one go. This is like, it sounds like a cliche, but this is a marathon, not a sprint. If you're doing it as a sprint, you're doing it wrong, I think, because then you're doing it to just tell people you're doing it, I suppose.
Yes.
I certainly don't want a tick box exercise.
Yeah.
Right? That's not authentic, is it? Right.
No. And it goes a bit deeper. So it isn't just about what you see visually or what the makeup of your company is. It's also about the culture as well. So the culture of your company comes over years and time. That doesn't happen overnight either. If you're doing that, that's not authentic either. That's just a mission statement you've written in 5 minutes, So I think all of these, I think we should we're never going to see progress in a split second. So we should all give ourselves take a chill pill, give ourselves a pat on the back that we're actually talking about it and doing it and going in the right direction. I think sometimes companies are too quick to rush to get it right.
You've all spoken about role models, really, and how important do you think that is? And going back to the question about kind of senior positions within companies, and I was at a conference earlier in the week, and actually they talked about the concrete ceiling. It wasn't even a glass ceiling. How important do you think those senior role models are for more junior positions, females, to see that there are people there for them to aspire to for that career progression?
Absolutely important, right? Retention of your best employees is only going to occur if you have that system set up where you're mentoring and supporting and providing a pathway for those employees that are wanting to, step into various positions. I think whether you're male or female, I'll add, right, that mentorship piece and that support piece is extremely important. But that comes down to your culture and what you are trying to achieve. So, I appreciate today's very focused on International Women's Day, but it is what sort of culture do you want to create in your business? And how do you look after sometimes younger members of your team coming through and creating a pathway for them, your succession planning, and, making some real deliberate choices to make sure that you get that balance right within your organisation. I mean, there's just so much talent out there to exclude whether it's women or any other minority, right? It was just folly, I think, right? There's just so many terrific people, and particularly in our sector where we've got such a diverse customer base. I mean, I think, how can you service them if you don't have a diverse office, right? It just adds so much value, those conversations that you have, different perspectives that you get that you don't get if everyone's homogenous, whether it's all male or female or white or anything, right? And I really value that in a workplace, to have a real mixed bag of people, because I've learned so much from people. It's how they've been brought up, where they've come from, their background, whether they're an immigrant, where they've come from. So for me, it's encouraging that and learning from everyone and becoming a learning organisation.
I think is it not changing the narrative right from school? Because when you're young and you don't see somebody like you, and that you might, so for example, take architecture. You know, I was lucky that my dad was in the industry, and that was my open door, but I didn't really see anybody that looked like me in that industry. So I think it's changing that now, and it's difficult at school because teachers don't really know much about specific careers. They don't know very much about a lot of the disciplines that are in the industry, in property and construction industry. They might know the really famous ones like architect, maybe you might get away with, but quantity surveyor or engineer, you know, engineer, M&E engineer, all those sorts of things, they wouldn't know really unless somebody's been into the school to talk about it. So that you're already on a stumbling block there, and if it's somebody that can't see themselves there, then how are they ever going to know about it, know about it, or even aspire to be in it, you know? So I think it starts from school.
I can't imagine how difficult that would be, right? Because I'm probably pretty homogenous, right? White middle-aged guy, right? So just what you've just mentioned, you know, I've never had to face that. It's always been easy for me to find someone sort of similar to me, right, as a role model. I think that's a really important point to bring out. Because people, are you like me, right? If you've done it, can I do it, right?
Yes.
Conversation.
That's the equity thing. So, you know, people... historically in industry, that door has just been open for certain groups. That door has just been open. That's the bit we need to do now, is open the doors for the others that want to get in as well, you know. So I think that's the equity thing. That's the equity.
And I do think that's a really important point around kind of the education piece. And I think one of the things that we often talk about a lot is that when you talk about property and construction, you do think of these very stereotypical construction, often male-orientated roles, but there's a whole sector of support roles and departments and professions that go into to make the property sector what it is. You know, are we doing enough to make awareness of this? And I know, Sarah, your work around this is very much around this, but should we be as a sector doing more to kind of bring that to the forefront in education?
I definitely think so, and I think people just need to be made aware of opportunities. But kind of what we found over the past kind of 5 years that we've been running is that the issues like aren't so kind of one-dimensional as we initially thought. Like there's so many different moving pieces to educating more young people about these kind of professions, and that also comes down to you know, your parents and your support system that you have at home. Which I talk about a lot because that's something I really care about. So, for example, my dad is somebody who, if he even saw like a glimpse of a new career opportunity that he didn't know of yesterday, he would come to me like, Sarah, you can do this thing. Like, you know, you can do this, you can do that. And I'm like, okay, yeah, Dad, yeah, that's cool. But lots of people don't have parents like that who even have the time or the capacity to go around looking for these different career paths. So it will also be about engaging with them in different ways, because quite often when we engage with companies and we talk about young people, their first thing is, okay, well, we've been to schools already. We didn't really gain much from that, and they kind of just leave it there. But it's like, you know, what schools did you go to? Where are they? Are they single sex? Are they faith schools? Or kind of, you know, have you, you know, combined it like areas? Like, have you kind of actually targeted these things? Because all of those things matter. If you're going to kind of private schools only, or you're going to grammar schools versus schools in the most deprived areas of, I don't know, London or the places that you work and operate, you're going to have really different results. And that can be the start of, you know, someone's career journey in that case. So I definitely think that there's so many moving parts to this, but I definitely do think companies can be doing a lot more to be more focused and strategic in their young people outreach to get into the sector, definitely.
We're very lucky at Women Property because we have a schools outreach programme. And what's good is that you see women with diverse backgrounds in the industry, so they're making a success of it at different levels. So there's people that are in junior roles right up to board level as well that go in and will get involved in these schools outreach program. So I think that's what you need to do. You need to get as many people, don't you, in front of, and you need to show them what the breadth of the industry is as well, because it gives them choice in what they want to do. And also you have to give them, you can't, when you do it as well, you can't always say that university is the route through. Do you know that? Because people can't do that either. So you need, even if you don't offer that as a company or within your discipline, you need to give them some hope they can get there through whatever route they decide to go through, or is right for them and their family background or their circumstances. You need to give them as many opportunities to get through as many routes as possible as well.
And do you feel that's not happening? I mean, I'm just curious, right? It's a really interesting conversation, right? Because we've talked about things we can do, right? But obviously we're not doing enough, right? And there are things that are going on. But do you still sense there is resistance with all these things that we've said? And I mean, I suppose that's the big thing. How do we change if there's sort of resistance? Because they're all common sense things in many ways, right? We're talking about, but so important.
I heard a statistic the other day that in construction, there's 14% women, but only 1% are on site. So that, clearly not enough is being done to show women the opportunities. And I wonder if that sort of come back to your question, Rob, is there still this kind of view of certain career paths or roles having a lack of flexibility for people who are maybe parents or have other care roles within their life? So for example, taking the building site example, maybe there's some preconceived ideas about the hours, and the inflexibility, and therefore it makes it a closed door for a lot of women. Is some of the resistance really around that, rather than I guess maybe the perception rather than opportunities?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting point. There's a great set of posters, isn't there? I've just seen on LinkedIn where they were talking about, they think of a board member, is it a white male, or, and there was a whole lot of examples around that. And maybe, right, the construction industry suffers a little bit about that, right? It's not a job for someone who's female, right? And there are other, don't want to just point that out. There's all sorts of different roles where, maybe nursing is seen more as a female role, right? And we know there's some terrific male nurses as well. But is there just a bias in society, right? We've got to break down these barriers for a whole lot of different roles that pigeonhole male and female, I suppose.
Yeah, it's an ingrained stereotype, isn't it? That's the problem. That's the bit we need to demolish. We just take it as read, and it's all in us as well. We've subliminally absorbed that culture, haven't we? You've got to look internally and say, well, actually, no, that isn't how it should be.
I think I do this as a parent all the time, is just simple terminology. Like I won't let people say fireman around my children. I'd always say it's a fire officer, because the minute you start gendering any kind of role, then you're basically saying that role is for that gender. And I think it does take time, and it probably does take generations. It's not, I know I'm ingrained in that because that's the world I grew up in. So I've got to, and my children are still, you watch an old film and you still hear these words, or you read it in books, or like my daughter's into Harry Potter and it says fireman or policeman in Harry Potter. It's just what the world knew back then. And I think it's that kind of challenge of language and terminology that we need the confidence, I think, in the workplace or out the workplace to bring people up on that it's not, it's done in a constructive way to say, well, actually, no, please do not use that language.
They're difficult conversations, right? And it can make you very vulnerable. Right?
We've also got to remember as well that actually, men want what we have as well. Sometimes take our family, for example. We're the other way around. My husband looked after our daughter. She's at university now, but he looked after our daughter while I went to work, and that worked for us. And my daughter doesn't see it as anything different. It just happened to be that she still had a parent looking after her, was there available. And the other one worked, whether it was male or female really didn't make any difference to her. So I think it's that you know, men have been blocked out from doing some really great stuff as well.
Yeah.
They've not had that opportunity with their kids. They,
Yes.
you know, that it's almost like that stereotype of having to be the breadwinner. But that one's got to go as well. It doesn't matter. But anyway,
Yeah.
not winning bread, are we? We just we're sharing
Yeah.
bread.
That's why we're having these conversations, right? I think it's
Yeah.
really important, because sometimes you don't even realise just in what you're saying, you're biased, right? You're biased in some form or fashion.
Yeah, 100%. I agree, because I think I was the same actually. So I grew up like that. My mum went off to work, and then my dad looked after me and my sister like during the day, and then he works nights. And I just remember like my mum telling me about, just going back to the topic about bias, just the resistance that she also got from other mums at the time, because on the odd day or occasion, she'll come and pick me and my sister up from school, and the other mums were like, "Oh, you're here! Like, this is weird." Like, it was kind of that really odd, like, why aren't you here every day? Why is it like, why is your husband here every day? So that is also a thing that, you know, agrees that we need to get rid of, because it kind of sucks actually.
Yeah.
And you know, you're both parents, you know, so you're doing equal things.
And my husband was very popular in the school playground as the only man. And they were slightly disappointed when they saw me coming up.
Yeah, I think there's lots of conversations happening at the moment about shared parental leave as well. And I think a few of my friends have done it where they both shared, you know, the guys had 6 months and then the females had 6 months. And I think that's really, really interesting. And I think that goes back to what Sarah said about flexibility, that, you know, both parents, both genders, you know, or same-sex couples should be encouraged to have parental leave if possible. And perhaps that flexibility piece needs to become more at the forefront of that conversation. So, you know, it's not just the mum going off to pick up the kids at 3 o'clock. It can be anyone. And that's okay, and that's normalised. And, you know, it's not a stereotype just for one gender to do that.
I wonder whether that might be where the tide changes, because when everybody benefits, then it becomes the norm, doesn't it? I think when you're just doing it for one, it feels like somebody's sort of losing out. But actually, if you make it flexible and you allow both men and women to do what they want to do, or any, you know, whatever gender you identify with, you those people are allowed to have a bit of control over their lives of how they balance it, then it becomes the norm, which is why I think it will take a long time, because it doesn't. That sort of thing takes.
Potentially there might be a blessing with COVID, right? Because I know we've all become a lot more flexible in how we've worked. And I know, you know, where traditionally everyone was in the office Monday to Friday, you know, I know since we're all sort of back in the office, there's a far more flexible approach. So, you know, there's a mixture of the face-to-face, right, which everyone loves as well, where they're in the office with the same group of people, but there's an acknowledgement that work can be done remotely and effectively, and sometimes even better, right, depending on what people are working on. And potentially that might be, you know, one of the lasting effects of COVID, that we will have a more flexible workspace and a workplace. And you know, some of those things we're talking about, picking up kids and what have you, can be shared, right, and allowed. It's all okay.
I heard sorry.
Okay.
I was going to say, I heard a statistic the other day. I don't know if anyone's heard of an enterprise called Pregnant Then Screwed, which is like the most incredible. Yeah, they're awesome. I can't remember the exact statistic, but they were talking about the, you know, women that are mothers in companies that have maybe one or more children are more likely to be, you know, better at their jobs and, you know, more successful in leadership roles and better multitaskers and project managers. And I think people always need to see it as it's your whole character, like being a parent or, you know, wanting flexibility is a benefit to you and your career. And that should be seen by, you know, company owners, that these are good things, and having a life outside of work probably makes you better at your job. And again, like you said, it's about everyone benefiting from that, not just one gender.
I think years kind of traveling a lot and having kind of really sort of stressful, demanding roles, and I always said, well, if it takes me away from my son, it better be worth it. You know, I made sure that I was working in environments that fulfilled me professionally. You know, to get that balance. I probably didn't have the balance right until you know, us running our own business. But you know, up until that point, I think women do make calculated decisions about where they're working and who they're working for. So if you're employing women, then you probably, and you're doing it right, you've probably got a really loyal workforce of people who are there because the right fit for them, and they're not gonna what's the word, sort of compromise on certain things. And if you get that balance right, then they'll, you know, you've got them for a really long time.
Yeah.
And I was just going to add something about, you know, companies just being a lot better with support, I think, over the past kind of few years. And I think that's really come a long way, especially when it comes to women, because I've been keeping an eye on the news about menopausal support, which is something that, I mean, I'm only like 27, so I mean, it's still quite far away from me, but it's reading that and seeing that companies are actually doing more about that. I feel like in the workplace before, you couldn't even say stuff like menopause. People didn't even know what that was or how to support you. And I think as a woman, that is quite a stressful time. I know it was for my mum. So companies that are actually doing the work to actually be there for their female employees that are going through that, and learning and just listening on how they can best support them throughout that journey, I think is really, really important. And it's also a really good piece of progress, I think. So I just think that was amazing.
It's really high on the agenda. I'm on the other side of that now, so I know exactly. I've experienced it. It's sometimes not nice, but I think it's really high on the agenda now, and lots of people are talking about it. And I think, I mean, it is very embarrassing if you're sitting in a very professional meeting and a flush is on its way, and you're trying to be professional. I think you have to have that forum to be able to say, I'm really sorry, guys or ladies, I'm having a flush, just give me a moment, and just be able to let it go and carry on with the job that you're doing without it being seen as detrimental to how you work. So I'm really glad that it's higher up on the agenda, because I don't think it was even recognised as a medical thing. I mean, you talk about other things that women go through. Menopause was even less talked about than everything else, you know.
And do you think we are getting to a place in society where there is more kind of, you know, before, I think, you know, workplaces were very much, you come to work, leave your personal life outside the door, don't talk about anything. Do you think we are in a society where actually there isn't this kind of dark line between the two, that actually, you know, it is, you are who you are, whether you're in work or out of work, and whether it's menopause, whether it's pregnancy, whether it's going to pick up the kids, that's important to you and shouldn't be ignored.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, sorry.
I was going to say, it's back to being authentic, isn't it? Right? You can't be one thing at work and one thing at home. And I might get myself in trouble saying this, but I'll say it anyway, right? I don't necessarily believe in work-life balance. I believe you've got a life, right? Work's one part of that, and you've got other compartments sort of all that makes your life, right? So you've got to manage your life, right? And if things aren't going well at home, they're probably going to flow into work. And if things aren't going well at work, it's probably going to flow into home. So it's about how do you manage your life and being allowed to be authentic and the best person that you can be when you turn up in that office space, and being supported. So, you know, life's tough, right? We all have challenges. I could probably yell out to the audience and go, tell me about your problems. And I bet you every single person would tell me they've got something on their mind that they're dealing with. So, you know, it's how do you create that environment, because we're all on a journey, right? And, you know, work's a big chunk of that. So let's create an environment that's rewarding, that you've got a career, that you feel appreciated and supported. You can probably make some friends along the way, have a bit of a laugh, make some money, right? You want sort of all of those sort of things. Because, you know, in many cases, your colleagues come sometimes some very good friends, right? And, you know, we should all be helping each other along that journey.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I would say I really agree with that. This again might feel too basic, but it's about just being kind to each other and listening to each other and creating a space that feels you know, safe enough that if someone does have something personal, they can say that to their manager or their colleague, and it's taken seriously. And yeah, I think like Dina, you were saying about like being professional and that being like, you know, very set in stone. I think one good thing that's come out of the pandemic is that kind of blend. You know, people are working in their bedroom, there might be a dog or a kid behind them, or, you know, it's all kind of merged a little bit. And I think that's actually a really positive thing, because, you know, it breaks down that barriers of the, you know, the scary senior person or the person that might be a bit shy. And actually, yeah, it's about bringing your whole self to work and not being scared to, you know, talk about those things out of work that could actually benefit your work life. And, you know, there's probably loads of people with really interesting hobbies or interesting pastimes that can influence the work and help them become more creative and more innovative. And of course, we need to be professional, but yeah, why can't you talk about what's going wrong at home? Like, it should be okay.
It gets you to understand people better, doesn't it? We've got a program, we have an EDI program at Buttress called Be Proud, and we get people to tell their stories. So whether it's social mobility or whether it's ethnicity or sexual orientation or anything really that has influenced the way that you are and who you are and how you've turned out, you can talk about. So we do it through telling stories. So we had somebody that told us about their story of growing up in a council estate and not really seeing architecture as a route for them, and actually I sat down with him for an hour beforehand, because he said, I haven't really got a story, I'm white middle class. And I went, no, you've definitely got a story. And we dug deep, and he'd been on a council estate and none of his friends were, that all his friends were leaving school early, they weren't going to university. He wanted to do architecture and he just didn't see any other role models within his environment. And that became his story. And we learned so much about that one individual in an hour than we ever did before, and started to understand where his thought process came from. It's things like that that really help organisations get on really well. The other side is health and well-being as well, making sure that if somebody comes in, we've got a health and well-being policy called Be Well. Can you tell we've got everything that starts with a B? But it's and our health and well-being is about, we've got 3 mental health first aids, because people hide things, you know, because they're supposed to be professional. So people don't perform very well when they're hiding things. So you give them the outlet to talk about it and know that they're not going to get what's the word? I can't think straight. You know, they're not going to be penalised for that as well. So I think all organisations need to be that open, really, I think.
Do you think that's the job of kind of leaders to take that position to, you know, management having to?
I would say it's leaders that have an interest in it, because you can do a lot of damage if you're not interested in doing something. But we have it both ways. I'm really passionate about all of that. Mental health I'm really passionate about, and obviously EDI I'm really passionate about. So I've sort of led that, but I've had tremendous support from the studio. Volunteers from the studio run these programs. We don't bring specialists in to do it, and we're sort of on a learning curve, you know. So but you sort of probably need somebody on the board to lead, to sort of start it off. But then once you get the momentum going, I stand back a lot. Now those programs are functioning perfectly well without me. They don't need me at all. I just need to sort of kickstart it, really. And that's what drives the culture as well. But you do need that backing from management, otherwise it just becomes
certainly a cultural standpoint. I'm very conscious of that as a CEO, right? And the team looking at the whole management team and how we behave and interact, because what I focus on, right, and what the senior management team focus on comes important for the organisation. So I would say absolutely someone like myself and the other senior managers, it has to be important for us, right, to drive through that organisation. That's partly why I'm here, right, because I want to hear from such an esteemed group, right? I mean, I'm here to obviously contribute, but it really is important for me as a leader of an organisation. But, you know, certainly, you know, I put out to you as a panel, right? What more would you say, given that I'm probably the stereotypical piece that you're probably battling against in some ways, right? but I'll put myself out there, and maybe there's a conversation to have outside of this forum, because I'm welcome to hear from all of you separately. But what could I do as a leader of the organisation? What do you think, besides talking to my team, and I've done that, and I've obviously run around and spoken to a lot of the ladies in the business, but I'm very open to hear, because I know nothing we're facing, someone hasn't faced somewhere before, right, and found solutions for, or have made their organisations better.
I think Sarah should answer that as the new generation coming forward.
Yes.
I think you're doing a good job already, just by having that listening piece, to be honest. And I think, how we kind of work in our organisation is kind of starting as you mean to go on, and just if you're trying to push something or replicate something that you'd like to happen in your culture, it starts with the higher ups and how they interact with not just people on their level, but also their junior staff, volunteers, if you have any, and things like that. So I always say kind of start as you mean to go on, and start close to home as well, if you ever trying to inflict some kind of change.
Yes.
And
I also think, sorry.
Do you want to go, Sally?
I was just going to say, it's always good to talk about, solutions as well, because I think a lot of the time it's talk, and with best intentions, people want to deliver, but again, it comes back to that timepiece of you just get on with the daily life, but actually talking about practical, realistic solutions that can be done, in a good amount of time, and actually listen to what people want as well. So it might be that you've read something or you've seen some article, but what is actually relevant for your staff at this moment in time.
I think on that point of solutions, and also around kind of the mentorship point that you were making, is I always think that kind of exposure to junior people, to the rest of the business, and to levels higher up them, prepare them for those next step up. And do you think there is enough structure in the sector and organisations to enable that kind of cross-referencing of different roles and exposure to give people that chance to leap up? Because obviously we've said that there is this problem of there's lots of females in the sector, but they're not making up to those manager roles.
Sorry. Yeah.
You go, Sarah.
I just wanted to reference, I actually freelance part-time with this company called Roots Inspire, and they're kind of they focus on leadership development for ethnic minority professionals. So it's usually kind of mid to senior level, but what they can do is they basically mentor younger people within different organizations and companies around the world, to not just in a professional sense, but also in a personal sense. So if there's a certain mind block that you're going through, or maybe you feel too scared to speak up in your workplace, or you've been denied promotion 3 or 4 times, you don't know what's going on, you can get mentorship for those kinds of things. Right. And I think a reason why a company like that can even exist is because that people still feel very scared and fearful in their own workplaces. They don't feel comfortable, or they don't feel like their workplaces are an open enough environment to voice these concerns. And they even don't have role models that they can look up to in their company. Maybe there's a certain kind of really hierarchical structure that they can't maybe talk to a higher up if it's not relating to kind of work exercises and things like that. So I think opening things up a little bit, if there's events that you can host at work, just where people can talk to each other, like a director can talk to someone who's that's a graduate, or maybe has just got chartered. You have those different touch points of interaction. That alone can really, really help have a more open culture. But that mentorship piece is so important, because I don't think there's enough of that in the industry. I've seen loads of mentorship programs, and I feel like the ones that are really successful are the ones that place emphasis on those kinds of things. That kind of, there's no such thing as the higher ups and the people who low rank down here. We're all just people at the end of the day. And if you invite people to chat and to talk and share their experiences in a vulnerable manner, you can get a lot out of that. And even there's reverse mentoring and things like that. There's so many things that you can learn from each other. And I think once companies start to adapt that kind of strategy, it can be really good for them.
I agree.
I think that actually, if you look at it, because it's different in different parts of the industry. Some parts of the industry do it better than others, and you'll probably find those bits that do it better have a better balance of male to female ratio. And I think that's what it is. It's maybe learning from different disciplines. So seeing where it is successful, and maybe, I suppose construction is probably the worst, I would imagine. I don't know. But maybe it's that cross-fertilisation of information between disciplines, I think, or sectors.
I think a lot of
But
what
maybe
we
even
talk about is about the soft skills. You know, I think hopefully we're moving away from, you know, where you're just looking at a job role or a job description, but actually what women do bring are these kind of softer skills. It sounds stereotypical, but I think it's probably scientifically proven as well. So the things that you guys are talking about, mentorship and these kind of open discussion forums and things, they're probably initiated by women, because we just seem to have that grasp of these kind of softer skills, which I guess kind of brings me on to the next question, really, which is about kind of mirroring the workplace. So in whatever sector, you know, you're working in, we've talked a bit about kind of, you know, diversity. So, you know, if you're, I don't know, if you're, you know, talking about student accommodation, for example, you know, if it's 50% male and 50% female, well, then surely 50% of the people making decisions about what goes into that building should be female. And with that, then maybe they do bring in the softer skills. I was talking to someone earlier in the week, and it was like, God, why aren't there 50% male teachers? Because surely at schools there's 50% boys and 50% girls, but there's not. And, you know, and the same with, you know, with you know, with different backgrounds, different colours, different races. You know, how do you think we can move to a place where actually the workplace mirrors, I guess, the sector that you're working for?
If we crack that, I tell you what, we'll all do the talking circuit, I think. I mean,
well, can I give an example? Actually, there's an example with STEM studies. So there was a massive push about, I don't know, was it 10 years ago, 5 years ago, something like, because there were not enough female students or females going into the industry, into the science and engineering industries. Now look at it. I mean, my daughter is at Sheffield Hallam, and they've got a huge STEM department, and I think that's the same. There's a lot of universities now that are promoting their STEM studies. So that's what we need to do. I think a lot of it happens it's educating parents, it's educating schools. That's the foundation for anything that happens later on in life with people's professions as well, as they come through the system. So I think that's what it is. There was some kind of push, I think, at school level to get more girls into biology and all the science subjects, and it's working. I mean, I don't know what the proportion is now in engineering, and it takes time. There must be at least a decade before you actually see success in it.
Yeah.
But it will work. So maybe that's what it is. I mean, I'm no guru on this, but I wonder whether it needs more focus.
There needs to be like an awareness campaign. So a conscious campaign that is, you know, the appropriate influential people. But time is something that's needed.
And is there that body?
I was just going to say, what is measured, right, gets focused on. So, you know, that's my business hat on. So, you know, maybe a big part of it is measuring it, so you've got the metrics, right? Because sometimes we sort of talk in a bit of a fluffy way and make some generalizations, and unless you actually have the data and it's data driven, then, you know, sometimes you don't see it, right, because of those biases that you might have. And then, you know, that then goes, well, how do we address that? So, you know, maybe part of that is, you know, having a look at those statistics and then looking at those areas where there is an imbalance in anything, going, well, what do we need to do? Why? I mean, why is a really good question for a lot of things, right? Why is that the case? And just asking that question.
White middle-aged men making decisions about where women are going to live. You know, why? You know, and that is.
I'm not brave enough to do that. I can tell you that right now.
You know, if you look at kind of, I guess, the investors, the developers, the operators in kind of director role levels, the planners, you know, all these people are definitely male orientated roles, generally speaking, and they're making all the decisions when actually 50% of the people going to be living in those buildings and living in those communities are female. And we see this a lot at conferences, and I'd probably be as bold as to say it's generally 90% male, 10% female at a lot of these conferences. And what that's bringing is a lack of diversity in thought. It's not just the optics. It's it's actually that agenda that's been put together has been put together probably by men for men. Therefore, the attendees that are going are men, and that culture shift really needs to change. Maybe you're right, Sally. Maybe it is a campaign, and we all need to do something about it. We're lucky enough to have spoken to quite a few companies who actually say, no, we're not speaking at that event because it's not gender represented, or I'm not going to speak as a male, I'm going to get one of my female colleagues to actually stand up and speak. And I guess if talk, Rob, you said, what can we do? Well, maybe that's what we have to do, is actually be stronger about those things, and saying, sometimes saying no to things in order to say yes.
Or using the voice that we have between us collectively to make those changes and ask those difficult questions, I guess.
Yeah, it's cultural visible. I think we talk about visibility, don't we? And but the problem is that you can put as many women in a conference as you can, but and make them visible, but they may still be invisible if they're not seen as important, or having or as expert in their field, or as influential. And until you do that, so that's that bold bias coming in again, isn't it? That naturally they'll want to speak to their male colleague. I mean, I've been in that situation before where I've been there and I'm actually the senior, and they're asking my colleague next to me because they've assumed he's more expert than I am, and that's that can happen. And I think until you do that, it doesn't matter how many women you make visible, they'll be just as invisible.
Yeah.
There's a lot of work to be done then, isn't there?
Yes.
Well, that's a depressing thought.
No, but it's going in the right direction. So sorry, it's going in the right direction.
But I think that's the point of International Women's Day, really. I guess just to kind of sum up, really, is that it enables us, as we said at the beginning, to have these conversations, and between us in an hour, we've come up with some ideas of how to make progress, and hopefully our viewers watching have also seen that. And collectively, it feels like the industry wants to change, and as long as there's desire and motivation to do that, it can happen. But I think we've talked about time being a factor. We've talked about difficult conversations, and we've talked about kind of actually taking action. So I think if we can all do that, then it will continue. It can continue to grow, hopefully in an authentic, organic way.
And listen to people like Sarah, because they're the ones that are going to be shaping the future. Definitely.
Sarah
Definitely.
does a great job, and a very, very important job. And definitely do all go and check out the Land Collective to see the work that Sarah's up to. So, but thank you, everyone. That was once again a brilliant session, and I know, as ever with our sessions, we could carry on talking and coming up with ideas and being productive and trying to write all the solutions, but I hope that I feel emboldened to go away and use the voice I've got to make that change, and hopefully all our viewers do, and everyone does. And a big thank you to all of you for joining us today and taking the time out. We really do appreciate it. Thank you very much. Our next Property Lounge session is
in May. The beginning of May. Is going to be around customer experience, so keep an eye on all of our social media and our website to find more details about that as well. We are looking for a sponsor for that session, so if you want to get your brand in front of our network and in front of our audience, then please do get in touch. Otherwise, thanks once again to all of you for watching, and thank you to our amazing panelists. Have a great day.
We'll see you soon. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.